Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's business building session. I'm Mike O'Neill with Bench Builders, and I'm going to be your host for today's Q&A session. Joining us today as an expert panelist is Amanda Jelks. She is the founder and managing attorney with Jelks Law. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Mike. Happy to be here.
We're glad you're with us. And my colleague, Rhonda, will be with us again today. Rhonda Beard is going to be sharing with you some important updates. That's kind of what she does and does very, very well week in and week out. Welcome, Rhonda.
Thanks, Mike. Glad to have you with us, Amanda.
To give you a little bit of a sense of what we're going to be doing today, we launched these Q&A sessions to bring together experts like Amanda to help you as business owners, as leaders, and as HR professionals stay on top of what's important. What things do you need to be doing to be building your business? Just as kind of a reminder, we want to hear from you. And that is, we want you to go to that chat pane. And if you've got questions, note those questions so we can be monitoring those throughout our time together. Also, just to remind you, everybody who's registered for this Q&A session will be getting an email, and that email will have a link to have not only the recording of this webinar, but it also include the slide deck that we're using. So you should be expecting to see that. Typically, those goes out on Friday after our Thursday Q&A sessions. But before we transition to Amanda, I'd like to go ahead and put that chat box to use. And I'd like to ask you all a question. And that is, we've just passed the halfway mark for 2020. And very few people would disagree. It has been quite an eventful year so far. But here's my question. Now that we've passed the halfway point, you probably have already given thoughts to, what do I want to accomplish in the second half of 2020? And that is, what goal might I have set or has been set for you that you would like to accomplish? And so here's what I'd like to ask you. It doesn't have to be a professional goal. It can be a personal goal, but we would like to kind of get an idea of what goals you've set for yourself for the balance of 2020. So if you would, go into the chat box and start listing those so we have an idea of what is on your mind on what you want to accomplish in the balance of the year. Our expectation is some of you may be thinking in the back of your mind, I've always want to hang out my own shingle. And if that's the case, then you're in luck, because that's exactly why we've asked Amanda to join us today. Let us know what you would like to accomplish the balance of 2020. Amanda, while those are coming in, let me just ask you this, that you're getting this cold. Have you established at least a goal that you'd like to accomplish in the balance of 2020?
I have.
Would you be willing to share at least one, if it's not too personal?
Yeah, so for professionally, one of my goals is to do more online seminars. Prior to coronavirus rearing her very ugly head, I did a lot of in-person seminars for many different groups in the area, but I've never really done many online webinars. And so trying to pivot to becoming more comfortable with not seeing my audience, not being able to read the room, and all the things I get to do when I'm in an in-person one. But in particularly, when it comes to social media marketing, being able to do the Facebook Lives and the Instagram Lives and those sorts of things. I haven't actually started those, but I have given myself many a pep talk about it.
Well, I hope this will be a good practice for you. There's no question, if that's your goal, you're going to accomplish it. Rhonda, let me ask you, have you set a goal for the balance of the year?
I have, and it's a little bit broad, but as a lot of people know, and you as well know, Mike, we've had to pivot what we do pretty radically over the last few months. I had a lot of training planned and scheduled when COVID hit, and all of that stopped. We do a lot of management training, and that's not something that companies are doing right now. And so, we pivoted to start offering these webinars and helping small businesses and HR professionals. And we've really branched out into a lot of different areas. So my goal would be to kind of fine tune and focus more into a few core competencies that I'm really good at, that I can offer to people and really connect and be able to share more expertise in more of a focused area. So I kind of feel like we've done everything we need to do, and we're really trying to help people as much as we can, but it's time to fine tune and focus a little bit more.
All right, thank you. You know, we've heard from Brian. Brian Rutberg is a new friend of mine, and he and I had a chance to have a really good conversation this week. And he's sharing with everybody here what he had shared with me in that conversation, and that is he's launching a new website, and he's more specifically looking at trying to modify his training offerings so that he can turn all what he does into a book. And Brian's a very interesting fellow. As a matter of fact, he's so interesting, I've asked if he'd be willing to be a future panelist. And so he's on the calendar to be joining us. So Brian, thank you for sharing that. Hey, David, it's good to have you back with us. I'm going to read this. I'd like to accomplish more training to others and teaching more entrepreneurial ideas and showing others that true success is our ability to enjoy the struggles and challenges that businesses and life have to offer. Well, that's well written, David. And I hope that will factor into some of the things you're going to be sharing with us today, Amanda. Julie writes, organize my professional career and help people and companies work more effectively and stay strong in the skills and effectiveness in our personal and business lives. Thank you for sharing that, Julie. You know, we ask this question in large part because it's all too often we can get very, very focused. We're so busy doing what we've got to do that sometimes we forget to step back and kind of plan. And therein lies, I appreciate you kind of sharing that, but that also kind of gives us an idea of what's on your mind as we kind of transition to hearing from Amanda. Let me give you a little more background on Amanda. When we chatted prior, I said, Amanda, you could talk about a whole host of things, but if you were to share what is on your mind and perhaps on your heart, what might it be? And this is kind of the topic that she came up with, and that is 5 things everyone should know when starting their own business. Now you might ask, why would a lawyer be talking about that? Well, I would say in short part because the things that she is going to be sharing today are the things that she experienced firsthand when she started her own business. And we just thought that that would be fascinating to hear from not only Amanda as a lawyer, but Amanda as a business owner. And so, again, Amanda, we're glad to have you with us. We're glad you're with us, and we're just going to jump right in. You know, what prompted you to go about starting your own business?
I never envisioned being a business owner. That was never a goal that I had set for myself. I knew for a very long time that I wanted to practice law, but going all through law school, the plan was to always work at a big law firm. And I did that. In my mind, education was the key to success, the key to happiness, the key to having what one wanted in life. But when I went to the highest degree possible in my field, a Juris Doctorate, I learned that I still didn't have the things that I wanted, that I thought would make me happy. And ultimately, I realized that what I was really looking for was freedom. And working in a big law firm, making a lot of money, still didn't provide me with the freedom that I wanted. I wanted to be able to eat dinner with my family every day, to take off early and go to my children's karate classes or soccer games or what have you, and not feel guilty for not being at the office. I wanted more control over how I lived my life. Do I work 80 hours this week or do I work 35 hours this week? I just wanted to be in charge of my life. So after practicing law for 5 years, I realized that that lifestyle was not going to afford me the freedom that I wanted. And that's when I decided to start my firm.
You know, you said that you had been working for a large law firm and you were there for about 5 years before you kind of made this plunge. How did you go about literally the process of of transitioning from being a very accomplished attorney in a large, very successful firm to go and open up your own business. How in the world did you go about? What was the thought process?
It was terrifying. I knew 1 year into large law firm life that was not sustainable for me. That wasn't what I thought it was supposed to be. But it still took me 4 additional years to finally work up the courage and the nerve and believe in myself enough to start my own firm. I was in a unique situation in that at that time I had 3 children. 2 of them were in daycare, which means that my daycare expense was double my mortgage. And my husband's in the military, which means he makes no money. And so I was the breadwinner of our family. And there was a lot riding on me walking away from a very nice salary and starting my own firm. So in order for me to prepare, I took to lunch every attorney that I knew that had transitioned from law firm to solo practice and asked them the hard questions. What do you wish you would have known that you didn't know? What kinds of slaps in the face has business ownership given you that you didn't anticipate? And how did you prepare? And that was very, very helpful for me.
So you knew about a year in that this was not the right fit for you, but you spent the next 4 years preparing for that transition.
I did.
Asking lots of questions of those people who went before you. And in retrospect, now that you've been doing this, to what extent would you say that the advice that you got then was accurate?
I think it was accurate, but I will say that one of the things I wish I would have done was talk to non-lawyers about their experience transitioning from the corporate world into their own business. Lawyers, particularly in the smaller or mid-sized towns, I found that there was always something that they were holding back. And I really think that was a fear of competition. So they didn't tell me everything. They told me about 75% of what I was really asking, but I certainly wish I would have spoken to other people that were not in the legal practice about business ownership as well.
I appreciate your candor on it. How many classes did you take in law school dealt with how to run your own law firm?
0.
Okay.
It's not even an offering. I've never heard of such a class in law school.
Wow. That might be kind of telling. And so you're saying that the practice was they told you a lot, but they probably held a little bit back.
Yeah.
And maybe if you heard from enough people over coffee, you can figure out what that missing 25% might have been.
Yes.
If you had asked business people, and maybe you still are to this point asking business people, what might you have heard from business people prior to launch that you might think might be a little different than what you heard from your lawyer friends?
Well, one thing that I did when I launched my firm is that I started in one of the local business incubators. And so I think there were 80 different businesses there. There were a couple lawyers, solo practice lawyers in the building, but most of them were across all industries. And so I had an opportunity to network with them at that point, and that was very helpful to be around people that were at their similar stages in the business process as I was. But I think that, and I don't know if this is unique to lawyers or not, having a law degree and being able to run a business is not the same thing. Those two things are not related. And I think that's true probably for all industries. We're experts in what we do, but that doesn't necessarily translate into running a successful business.
Amanda, you're describing what your experience was like leading up to launch, and now you've been in business. How long ago did you launch Jelks Law?
It will be 5 years, July 22nd.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's pretty remarkable. Matter of fact, you were already booked. We had already talked, and you had said, yes, Mike, I'd be happy to be an expert panelist. You were recommended to us from our friend at Sparkative, Christina Hooper. you may recall that. But after you already said, yes, I got the current month's copy of the Chattanooga Edge. Now, we got folks on this Q&A session from all over, but if you are in Chattanooga, you're probably getting this. And for those who have not seen it, there's a wonderful feature story about Amanda right there. So let me just stick that plug in, because when you read that, you begin to see beyond just Amanda the professional. And I may come back to that here in just a few minutes. So you've been doing this now for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask, of the things that you could talk about, what would you like to talk about? You said, I'd like to kind of share lessons learned 5 years in. Can we move to that? What would be some of the things that you wish you had known then that you now know that you want to share?
So one of my primary practice areas is small business startups. I help them with getting their ducks in a row and preparing to launch, whether it's forming the proper entity, corporations, LLCs, et cetera, getting their contracts in order, and so forth. So what I'm going to share today is both partly my personal experience with starting a business, but also the struggles that I see other business owners have on a daily basis. For me personally, the very first, well, one of the reasons I think that I have been successful in business is because I have always been keenly aware that I don't know what I don't know. I know the legal aspect of running a business. I don't know a thing about accounting or finance or bookkeeping or marketing or social media, or there's so many other components, human resources, there's so many other components there. And so I think it's important for all business owners to go into business realizing that there are things that exist out there that you have no idea about. And that is why it is so very important to surround yourself with people that do. So when you're forming a business, you need a team. You need an insurance person, someone that can make sure that you and your products or your people are properly protected if something were to go wrong in your business. You need an accountant or a bookkeeper, someone that is watching over the financial side of your business. It is so very easy to get laser focused on the product that you are manufacturing or the service that you are providing, and you know that there's enough money there to pay the bills every month. But at the end of the day, you need to be fully aware of what the numbers are in your business. And if you're not a finance person, you need one on your team. You need an attorney to make sure that you are properly protected, your business is properly protected, and that you don't hit a legal hiccup in the road that you may not be able to recover from. So that's one thing that I've always been aware of. Even 5 years in now, I am still aware that there are things out there that I can't even imagine, because that's not my area of expertise. So surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, at least in some areas, so that they can always have your back.
I'm making notes as you're speaking here, and that is, you humbly acknowledge that you don't know what you don't know. And in starting the business, you learned that having someone who can advise you on protecting in the form of insurance, someone who can advise you on monitoring from an accounting standpoint, and acknowledging the role of an attorney. Does that mean that you had to go out and pay for all these services?
You either need to be prepared to pay for those services, or you need to have the time necessary to learn how to do it yourself. And there is no other option. Either you throw yourself into classes and books and so forth and learning how to keep your own books, or you pay someone else to do it.
So you've shared that you acknowledge you didn't know what you didn't know, and you surrounded yourself with people who knew the things that you needed to know, and what you didn't say, but it's implied, and you listened and acted on that.
That's
What
right.
else did you learn that you should have known that you would like to share with the folks?
One thing that I still have to remind myself of regularly is that it's so important as a business owner to work on your business and not just work in your business. You can either be the employee of your business or you can be the owner. And certainly, as an owner, sometimes we do spend time working in an employee role, getting out there on the manufacturing line and helping produce the products or actually providing the services. But it's also really important that we take a step back and work on the business. Working on the business can mean a variety of things. It can mean, instead of me being the sole person that provides legal services, I gather a team and I teach them how to do it the way that I do it, so that even when I'm on vacation, the business is still very much running because I have a well-oiled machine or team members put in place to keep it going even when I'm not here. Another way that one can work on the business instead of working in it is by developing systems. Just your team knows step by step by step what needs to happen, or you have structures put in place. You've automated certain things so that you don't have to take 15 minutes every time the phone rings and log notes and send calendar invites and so forth. There's just a system put in place to keep that moving. So working on the business and not just in it. Even I still struggle with that because there are times where we have a heavy caseload or a heavy demand and I want to get in there and help knock out deadlines and so forth. And I absolutely do that because that's what our clients need. But you still have to play the role of the owner as well.
You know, Amanda, I don't know if this still applies or not, but I remember a point where physicians and lawyers, it was frowned upon for them to advertise their services. Now, you can't drive more than a quarter mile on the interstate without seeing billboards, but would business development, client development be part of working on your business?
Absolutely. It absolutely would. And at least in the legal profession, it is still very frowned upon by other lawyers to do any sort of marketing or advertising. The only lawyers that do the billboards or the TV ads or the radio ads are bankruptcy lawyers, Social Security, disability lawyers, and personal injury lawyers. Those are the only three that do those things. But it is 2020, and social media is a wonderful way to access potential clients. And so I do marketing and advertising through other forums. I don't personally see the value in the billboards, but online is a wonderful thing. And at some point, you just realize that those other lawyers that frown upon it, they're not your clients anyways, and so it's okay if they frown a little bit.
Hmm. All right, that shows a little bit of the toughness of Amanda coming through. You know, you spent a long time with a large law firm, and they could perhaps hide behind that mantra of "we don't advertise," but you own your own business. You have your own payroll to meet. You're trying to grow your business in the way that makes sense. Have you found a receptive audience to some of the efforts you're doing to grow your business through social media and the like?
Absolutely. I find that it's helpful, especially on social media or any online, whether it's just your website. People need information. People have problems that come up every single day that they are not equipped to deal with. The first place they go is the internet, and they type in, what do I need to know when I start a business? What are some key contract phrases I need to be aware of? I want to be there to provide that information. And so I haven't had any negative pushback from non-lawyers about the articles that I write on my website or the information that I provide on social media, because it's very helpful information to everyday people.
Anything else that you want to add on lessons learned before I kind of move to kind of the pros and cons of business? Anything else that we've not covered?
Yes. One thing that I tell all of my clients, because they all have a tendency to do it when they're first starting their business, is that being the cheapest person, the cheapest business, is not a competitive advantage. There are so many people that launch their business and their tagline is, we're the cheapest in town, or we have the lowest prices around, or we'll beat anybody's prices. And that's not a competitive advantage. And oftentimes it leads people into resenting what they do, because good clients are not looking for the cheapest attorney. They're looking for the best. They're not looking for the cheapest mechanic. They're looking for the best. Cheap doesn't equate to the quality of services that you provide. And when people do end up working with the cheapest around, those clients usually end up being the most difficult to deal with. And so being the lowest cost option on the market is not a competitive advantage for you. It is so much easier if, I did some numbers over here, let me pull them up. If your goal is to make $50,000 your first year in business, well, you can either have 50 clients that pay you $1,000 each, or you can have 500 clients that pay you $100 each. I would much rather focus on getting 50 new clients this year than 500. And one other thing that I would share is that going into business, a lot of people have these great ideas, and they're wonderful. They are amazing ideas. But people with amazing ideas that launch businesses fail all the time. And it has nothing to do with the quality of their idea. It has to do with their rush to start the business, and they didn't take the proper steps to protect themselves. There's three things that people need to keep in mind when they are launching their business and they're wanting to protect themselves from the many risks and liabilities that are out there for business owners. Insurance, contracts, entity formation. When you launch a business, you are providing a service that could injure someone. If you are a physical therapist, you could cause bodily harm to them. If you are in the construction industry, you are building a structure that could fall down on a family. If you are in the finance industry or the legal industry, you're giving advice that someone may rely on, and it could cause financial harm to them. If you end up causing harm inadvertently to someone, then you're putting yourself and your personal assets at risk if you do not have those three things: insurance, liability waivers by way of a contract, and the proper entity formed. So when business owners get sued and they don't have those things in place, liens get placed against your home that you and your spouse own together. Your mother's bank account gets garnished if she's put you on there as a co-owner to help her pay her bills because she's elderly. And it's not a place that you want to be in. And there's very affordable, easy ways to protect yourself. But people rush to going into business and they don't take a pause and think about those things. So those are the three things that I preach to everyone that you need to have.
So Amanda, you're already getting shout outs. Brian writes, that's exactly his wife's experience. She's an estate planning and elder law attorney. Mm-hmm. And it looks like you're spot on, as we would kind of expect. You made a comment a moment ago. I want to go back to that, and that is something to the effect of simply having a great idea doesn't mean it's going to fly in the business world.
That's right.
That you've got to give it time. Let's go back to that. You mulled this decision for a long time. I think we said it was years before you made that, 4 years. Do you think that in retrospect served you well to wait?
It did. I love being a business owner so much. And sometimes I look back on those 4 years and I'm in I wish I would have started. I should have started earlier. I wish I would have. I'd be so much further along if I have. But then I really have to step back and appreciate what I learned in those 4 years. The due diligence that I took to make sure that I didn't, that I knew as much as I could possibly know going into this. And so the preparation is key.
Matter of fact, you got another shout out here, Amanda. Christina, who I spoke about earlier, one of the most knowledgeable new business owners that she's ever worked with. This is Christina Hooper. The research time she gave herself was obvious. It's kind of coming through. I want to ask one other question of you, and that is, as you step back, you're a business owner coming out of a corporate legal role. Ron and I are HR folks who came out of a corporate HR role. You know, when I founded Bench Builders, I became a business owner. And therefore, I've had folks line up and says, "Oh, Mike, I sure wish I had done the same thing you have done." Do you hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
When I turned in my notice at the big law firm, half of the attorneys that came to say farewell followed with, "I wish I had the guts to do it."
Mm. I think that's telling. And that's one reason I was very interested in you being one of our panelists here, because you not only thought it through, you planned accordingly, but you had the guts to do it. Now, when you have folks come to you now, you're 5 years in, I suspect you already know how to answer this question. But if you were to say, what are the pros and cons of business owner? What do you share with those folks when they come and ask you that question?
So I absolutely love it. Even though I never planned on being here, I absolutely love it. I can do what I want to do when I want to do it. That does not mean that there are not consequences for that. But if I want to go all in this week and pull out 75 hours, I can because I choose to. If life is harder at home and I need to take a step back and only work 20 hours, I can because I choose to. I can go on vacation when I want to go on vacation, and I control who I work with. If I was working in the corporate law firm, sometimes I get placed with clients that are not my favorite cup of tea, but now I can weed those out. I don't have to work with anyone. I don't have to support causes, to litigate for clients that I don't believe in what they're doing. And I have a choice, and that's exactly what I wanted. But I always try to keep it real with people, and that there are certainly downsides to owning a business. And the first and foremost is it's really hard. It is really, really hard. People think when they go into business, oh, I can work 30 hours a week. Well, you can, but you may not meet your financial goals that you have for yourself. As a business owner, it is very much you eat what you kill. And so you have to constantly go out there and get clients. You don't just turn on your open light and they magically appear. You have to almost physically walk outside and grab them and bring them in. And that's challenging. And there's a lot of responsibility, especially when you start hiring people. I have 5 employees at my firm. And when you start hiring people, now you're not only responsible for the income at your house, I'm responsible for the income at their house too. Even when coronavirus rears her ugly head, I'm still responsible for the income at their house. And that's a very heavy burden to bear. Healthcare is another issue that small business owners have. Healthcare is not affordable, and that alone can cause a lot of people that would be great business owners to think twice about, and that's a problem that we don't currently have a solution for. So being a business owner, I absolutely love the challenges that come along with it. The good parts of it far outweigh the bad parts to me, but it's not a walk in the park every day. I work way more now than I did when I worked in a corporate environment, and I didn't think there was such a thing as working more, but there is. But the difference is I love it because I appreciate me for every minute I spend working in my business. Corporate law firms only appreciate your time if it is a billable hour. Things like these webinars are not billable hours. No one is paying me to do this, and so they wouldn't appreciate that. But I appreciate me for every second that I spend working on my business, and I do it because I absolutely love it.
Amanda, it shows. We're able to see you in your smile. You just kind of light up talking about these things. And my suspicion is there are others listening in right now who are taking notes just like I am, fast and furious. I would like to, if I could, if you could stick with us, I'd like to come back to you with some other questions, but I want to ask Rhonda, we shared with you that we kind of have a corporate HR background, and you've referred to COVID as rearing her ugly head. Well, that's what triggered the start of these webinars. COVID came and came very, very fast, and it presented a lot of things that we were trying to do is update folks who participate on some things. Rhonda, can we shift to you for a moment, and can you give us some updates on kind of what's going on there? Here we are now, we're into the 5th month of COVID, particularly from a regulatory standpoint.
Sure, thanks, Mike. And for those that have been on our webinars regularly, you know that we started kind of as a result of COVID to help businesses and help HR professionals figure out how to maneuver through a lot of things that were being introduced, a lot of changes, employee issues when this all started in March. And then as it sort of calmed down a little bit and people had a good understanding of what some of the new FFCRA regulations were, what some of the communication challenges were, we pivoted and started focusing on other topics that were beneficial to new businesses and small businesses. And now with an uptick in COVID in so many areas, I've been getting a lot of questions from people really more related to how do we handle these situations? How does, different things that they're seeing now than originally when COVID started. So I thought it'd be helpful just to do a quick update on FFCRA, the CARES Act, paid sick leave for those that are dealing with that, and then take any questions people might have related to it. So as a reminder, the expanded family leave and paid sick leave benefits for employees with companies under 500 employees are available until December 31st. So I know a lot of people may think that we're over that and school, was out. And so people are not using the family leave to stay home with kids anymore, but it's still there. And there's still a lot of questions around it, and people are still applying for it and trying to use it. So very quickly, the expanded family leave is available for parents to stay home with their children if they have no childcare or school's out. And so we still are dealing with some of the childcare issues over the summer, and now school's about to start again. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because next week we are going to talk more about, okay, school's about to go back in session. What does that mean for employees who have children? And we have a lot of different school scenarios and different school districts. And what does that mean for businesses and how to handle that? So we'll kind of save some of that for next week. But the paid sick leave is still something that people are dealing with as employees are out for testing or maybe out with symptoms. So the paid sick leave is 80 hours available to employees. And there's 6 reasons that most people are pretty well aware of that employees can take that paid sick leave. And again, it's for employers with under 500 people. And we're still going to be dealing with that through the end of the year. So, if there's questions about how to handle that, questions about whether it applies or not, those are things that we're definitely available to help you with and help answer as those questions and situations come up. Next item I want to talk about is just a little bit about exposure, COVID exposure in the workplace that people are, companies are dealing with maybe more so now than a couple of months ago, and testing and quarantine procedures. So, certainly there's a lot more testing going on now, and businesses really do have an obligation if they hear that someone working there has been exposed or tested positive for COVID, to make sure that they're advising and requiring the employee to quarantine and stay out of the workplace for the requisite period of time. And that's different kind of depending on whether they have symptoms, they don't have symptoms, they've been exposed, they've tested positive, but the basic quarantine time is 14 days. If you've had exposure, tested positive, you need to quarantine and be away for 14 days. And also as a business, you need to make sure that you're informing anyone that employee's been in contact with without providing that employee's name for privacy reasons. But you do need to inform people that employee may have been in contact with, that they've had exposure. and then, deal with that appropriately within your workplace in terms of cleaning, sanitizing, social distancing. And we now have, in many areas, at least in this region, mandatory masks. So that's affecting a lot of businesses now that need to have employees wear masks where they may have not had to a couple of weeks ago. So there's just a lot of new things coming up. And, as we mentioned when we started this, part of the challenge we have when we're planning these webinars is, a week ago, a lot of these things weren't in place. Now they are. So week by week, things are changing. There's new requirements, there's new situations, and we just really want to be here to help companies as they're, dealing with those situations and have questions about them. Something else that's come up is whether employees should be paid when they're taking time off for COVID testing. And that's a question that's come up a few times in the last few weeks. And as far as the paid sick leave that's available, there's a couple of scenarios where employees can use that paid sick leave if they're off of work to be tested. And one of them is if they've been advised by a physician that they need to quarantine. Then the paid sick leave is available to them and they can be paid using that. Or if the employee says, I've been exposed and I need to be off work to go get tested. Well, the regulation says if you are exhibiting symptoms and waiting for a COVID test or diagnosis, then yes, the paid sick leave is available. But if you're not exhibiting symptoms, then the paid sick leave, it really doesn't come in play. That's not an eligibility. But companies might have other paid leave time or may choose to pay employees, and that's fine if you choose to do that. But as far as the paid sick leave, really is only available as an employee if you have symptoms of COVID and are being tested, or a physician or medical care provider has given you advice that you need to self-quarantine.
So Rhonda, you have shared your understanding of how some of these things would apply. Let me ask the question maybe a little bit differently. I don't think you spoke to this. Let's say you have an employee who says to you as the employer that they've been exposed, but they don't show any symptoms. Should you allow them to continue working?
Well, if they've been exposed, but they're asymptomatic, there's a couple different scenarios. Certainly you should have them go get tested. Again, if they don't have any symptoms and they're off for testing, you don't necessarily need to provide the paid sick leave. But if they're not going to get tested, there's a couple of different options. First of all, the 14 days of quarantine. But if they have no symptoms, you certainly can continue to have them work as long as you can have them practice the social distancing and not be in close contact with anybody while at work. They should be wearing a mask. You should be sanitizing and making sure that they're not in any common areas. So if you have the opportunity for them to social distance, or better yet, telecommute. I mean, if they can work from home, obviously that's a much better situation than having them in the workplace. But if they're an essential worker and they're needed and you can practice social distancing for them and there are no symptoms being exhibited, then they can be in the workplace. But you just have to be very careful and cautious about that. And there's also kind of a new guideline for exposure. So when an employee says that they've been exposed, you should ask them, okay, were you exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID or had symptoms of COVID? And was the exposure within 6 feet of that individual and for at least 15 minutes? That's kind of the new guideline that CDC has put out, as exposure means within 6 feet of the person for at least 15 minutes. If you came in contact with them, said hello, walked away, that's not considered exposure for purposes of having to quarantine and having to be tested unless you have symptoms. So again, keeping up with CDC guidelines and keeping up with some of the changes that are happening on a regular basis is really going to be critical for employers to know how to handle those situations.
Rhonda, there's so much to keep up with. You've already mentioned that we believe that this is going to be something that we're going to pick up on next week. We can't turn on the television or open a newspaper or open up our browser without seeing spikes. Whereas the majority of the states are seeing an increase in those spikes. And as business owners, as leaders, as HR professionals, we were hoping by mid-July that we were beginning to see something in the form of this turning in a positive direction. Who knows? But it also means that we have to be that much more vigilant. Amanda, I know that when you shared that you went from being affiliated with a large law firm and you hung out your own shingle, I suspect that most of your clients or the clients at that large law firm were not small businesses. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
So what is it about small businesses? I'm going to go back to you for a moment, because what is it about small business that drew you in to that as a niche that you wanted to pursue?
Because I'm a helper by nature. If I could, my first career goal in life was to go into the medical field, but I also was aware that I have no desire to see anything on the inside of anybody's body. I don't want to look at organs or blood ever. So I was smart enough to know that that probably meant I did not need to go into the medical field. So I chose law instead. I want to, but I still very much want to help people where they need it the most, where they may not even realize that they need the help. So I chose to work with small businesses because that's what's given me the freedom that I want, and I want other people to have that freedom as well.
I appreciate you saying that. You chose to pursue small business. Rhonda and I would share that we're finding that most of our clients fall in that small to mid-sized category. What I have to remind ourselves is that the Small Business Administration says if you got 499 employees, you're still considered small. Mm-hmm. And that defines a lot of organizations. So not that we don't do business with larger organizations, we have purposely moved towards that small to mid-size organization. Rhonda, you went from working in a Fortune 500 HR environment to working with other, maybe even smaller businesses, but now through your affiliation with Bench Builders, how would you compare big business providing support to big businesses and or providing support to clients like Bench Builder does?
Well, and I'll say as well, I was thinking, Mike, when Amanda was talking about her 4 years contemplating new business, you know very well that I went through something similar in making a change, not 4 years, but quite a while, in being in human resources for other companies and having a very secure, scheduled, reliable position, knowing what you're doing, being pretty comfortable. It's tough to make that change. And Mike and I talked for probably almost a year before I was really comfortable making the move into something very different. But I would agree. It's definitely, you have to be in the right state in your life, the right time that you're comfortable with it. And the amount of time, Amanda, that you prepared obviously has definitely led to a lot of your successes. And I needed that as well. But some of, the comparisons I have, and definitely there's advantages in being in corporate America and in a position where you have regular responsibilities every day. And I think for individuals that are very structured and organized and need that structure in their life, it's probably a good match. And in my experience, I had great experiences with the companies that I worked with. I can't say that there was ever a company that the job was so horrible I just had to get out. I never had that. Great companies, great positions, and it was just a time in my life that I needed to make a change. And I'll have to say, it's, there definitely are struggles. There's my first couple months, I would get up and think, okay, what am I going to do today? Because there's not a schedule. There's not a plan necessarily. You have to make your own. You have to come up with your own plan, your own structure, your own schedule and responsibilities. And it's tough to make that change when you're used to a different environment. But when you do start to have some successes on your own, that you have developed, that you have followed through on, that you've been able to see through to fruition, it's very rewarding because, like you said, Amanda, it's all you. You've done it all. You know, you've created that for yourself and you're reaping the benefits of it. And so you can appreciate a lot more things that you put into your own successes where other companies may not have that same appreciation and gratitude for the things that you've done. And, you know, as far as working with small businesses, what I like is a lot of people in businesses, I mean, they just pick up the phone and call me and we just chat and we figure things out on the phone. And there's not a lot of hierarchy or levels or approvals or anything to go through to try to get something in place or to work on a project or a problem. So it's very interactive. It's very easy dialogue, and you just develop relationships, I think, much easier with small companies than with larger companies where things are so segregated and siloed in many cases.
Appreciate your insights. You know, Amanda, I took notes furiously. I don't know if I got this all down, but see to what extent this mirrors what you wanted us to hear today. And that is, this is some of the things you mentioned. And that is, you're acknowledging as a business owner that you don't know what you don't know. And therefore, it's critically important to surround yourself with the right people with the right skill sets. That you strongly emphasize that would include insurance, accounting, legal guidance. You also shared that it's important to not only work in, but work on your business. And some of the examples you listed were surround yourself with a team that complements what you're capable of doing. You stress the importance of having processes or systems in place such that though you own the business, if you choose to take some time off, the business doesn't come to a screeching halt. That people know what to do and they do that. You also, though I prompted this a little bit, you said you can't lose sight of, you need to grow your business with the right customers. And I think you shared that there are folks that you chose not to do business with because it was not the right fit. Am I getting this right so far?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And then you mentioned something else. This was another key takeaway, at least for me, and that is when you're talking about how do you price your business, the services you offer, the temptation for many, particularly when you're new in business, is cut your prices. To go, quote, buy that business because you're the lowest priced. And you kind of have cautioned us to not do that because you are the, quote, cheapest doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be the best, that you should strive to be the best. And people will pay for the best. I wrote that down. And the last thing I wrote down here, and I know I missed some things, Amanda, and that is great ideas, maybe even great business ideas don't necessarily mean that they're going to succeed. That you really have to put safety nets in place for that to happen. To what extent did I get most of what you said? Is that close to what you were hoping we would hear?
That's excellent, Mike. You may have done a better job summarizing it than I would have, but you got it.
Well, I also want to go back to this article because I think this, in my opinion, probably it seems to mirror what you've shared with us today. And I want to quote, this is a quote from the article I mentioned a moment ago. This is Amanda. I want to help people experience the same aha moment that I had starting my own business. I believe owning a small business is the key when it comes to having freedom and control in your life, and I enjoy helping people get there. That's a beautiful quote.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for being with us today as an expert panelist. Yes, you offer a lot of expertise, but we're also seeing the Amanda, the business owner, Amanda, the person, Amanda, the wife, and the mom. And so again, I want to thank you for being with us today. To give folks a little bit of a heads up of what is on the horizon next Thursday at 10 o'clock. We invite you to register to hear from Melissa Gracious. Melissa is a productivity expert. She actually has a doctorate in industrial organizational psychology. But what she specifically has been asked to speak on is so many people have either had to or have chosen to begin trying to do business at home. And she will offer hopefully some insights that would kind of help all of us, either if we're working full-time in a home setting or part-time, which is becoming much, much more common as a result of COVID. So I think you would enjoy Melissa. So we're glad she's going to be joining us next week. And I'd like to take just a moment and just kind of put things in perspective. Amanda, you referred to COVID as raising her ugly head. And as we've been talking to clients of late, what we're sensing is a lot of potential confusion. Business life as they knew it has been changed, perhaps changed forever. And the plans that were put into place may not be flexible enough going forward. And therefore, I would just like to remind folks who have registered and who are listening in, if you are in that situation, if you're dealing with a set of circumstances that feels like all you're doing right now is putting out fires, you're not alone. We work with clients every day who have that same sensation. And what we really are trying to do is acknowledge, if we can be of some help, if we can kind of come in and help you kind of see how this fire that you're dealing with, these fires you're dealing with, that kind of has morphed into a huge forest fire called COVID, don't let that derail your business plans. You can sit down and plan to deal with these issues and not always be in reactionary mode. So if we can be of some help, holler at us. We'd love to hear from you. So it's hard to believe that an hour has passed. I've sat here and listened attentively to both you and Amanda. Amanda, thank you for the time you spent with us today. Rhonda, again, always good job. I hear the clock saying it's the top of the hour. So thank you, Amanda, for being with us. Rhonda, thank you. And I wish everybody who's joining Godspeed. Thank you for joining this morning, and I hope you'll be able to be with us back next Thursday. All the best, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good day, everybody.